I thought I would share. So this is Happy Easter, everybody. Yeah. And I thought, in honor of it being Easter, I would read this something that has just occurred. I may be the first person to share this with you. I hope so. It happened yesterday in Connecticut. An Easter egg hunt hosted by pets turned into a shoving match on Saturday when greedy parents rushed the field and allegedly left some children hurt. This is the truth. There were about 1,000 people there on Saturday, and they had the field divided into 3 sections. Right, for the little ones were like 4 to 6, and then the other ones like 6 to 8, and the others 8 to 10. So here's like 1,000 parents with the children. According to station WFSB, Pets officials placed over 9,000 eggs on 3 different fields and had planned to stagger the starting times for the hunts at the visitor center in Orange, Connecticut. I think they have a little candy museum there. Quote, somebody pushed me over and took my eggs, and it's very rude of them, and they broke my bucket, 4-year-old Vincent Welch said. They broke his bucket. When it came time, the parents just bum rushed the area, parent Nicole Welch told the station. Shame on that parent that broke the little boy's bucket, causing him to lose the few eggs he had that someone else then picked up. Mother Lisa Stahl noted on the Facebook page, shame on the person that blooded another child's nose. And this is not funny. Why are you laughing? This is like an Easter egg hunt.
I know.
It's just, it's lovely. I think it's just like, are you enjoying this, Beverly? It's just amazing. Shame on that person that blooded another child's nose. And to those of you that hogged all the eggs for your own kids, I love that the person was really mad because people were hogging the eggs. So anyway, if anyone is to blame for what happened, it's the parents who tore down the signs and those that encouraged the kids to go from field to field instead of staying in their own designated areas, she added. Here's my favorite line at the end. Val McCormick complained that the hunt was worse than being at Walmart on Black Friday.
All over Facebook.
Yeah. So, fittingly enough, what I was going to talk about today, really fittingly enough, it's just quite amazing. I was going to talk about what it means to grow up. Right? It really is the truth, and so, which I sort of, I think that we underestimate really what that means, the significance of that idea of growing up. I actually call it the psychological path, the path of psychology. I'm embarrassed to say this, meaning that I call it, right? It's somewhat the Western way. I gave it. Well, I've said this 100 times. I've always conceptualized the Eastern path, the Buddha way, as the path of getting well, and the Western path is the path of growing up. 2 very, very different approaches to what healing is. And so it's such a huge subject. I'm really embarrassed in a way. I'm never embarrassed about anything, so never mind. I like to say that because it makes me sound humble. But it is an extraordinarily difficult, not difficult. It's important and this would be sort of like when we did a 3-week or 4-week workshop and we talked about it. I would feel that I could maybe get it out, but look, in this little talk, it's not going to be so successful. But I'm going to make a stab at it. I argue with some energy that Buddhism has yet to interface or really have a synergy with Western psychology. And you can't find a Buddhist within 5 counties who will agree to that. You really can't. But on the other hand, you can't. It's both sides are rather sure that our side is right, my side is right, or the other side is right. So I just want to just tell you that whether it seems to be the case or not, it's rather radical, the idea that Buddhism has yet to interface with Western psychology. And I think one of the best examples of that, which is you know what a cliche is something that somebody said that was really smart, and then everybody started repeating it, and it became a cliche. But it started with someone saying something that was really smart. And Yea defines a cliche as a nest. It's like a nest that we build, right? Something's really true, and then we make a nest out of it, and then we get kind of stuck in it. So this is a cliche that is one of the most well, I heard it 30 years ago. Dr. Jack Engler said this at least 30 years ago. He's a brilliant psychiatrist, and also who taught mindfulness, Vipassana in, I think, in Massachusetts. So he said, this is the famous, everybody has heard this forever. He said, you have to have a self before you can let it go. So that has become a real cliche in Buddhism. You have to have a self before you can let the self go. Well, to some extent, Buddhism is about letting that self go, right? You got to get rid of it, right? But then they'll say, but you have to go to psychology, right? To go to therapy so you can, first of all, you can build that self up, and then you can, I guess, get rid of it. So I think I've always thought that was a stupid statement. Dr. Engler, I'm so sorry. I mean, no one really questions that. Basically, it's really, you can hear that at Spirit Rock, you can hear that at Inside LA, you can hear that, I mean, really, you can hear that at IMS, where I've always gone, the Forest Refuge. You've got to, before, you have to have a self before you can let it go. So, that is, in a sense, the essence of a Buddhist, the Buddhist way, is that our job is to let the self go. And I would suggest to you that in some ways, one of the ways you can think about it is that the Western path, I would say, is the personal, and the Eastern path is the impersonal. And the idea of letting the self go, right, that would be sort of like the impersonal in a way, and the Western would be personal, blah, blah, blah. Never mind. I'm already in trouble. I'm already arguing with myself internally. One of the problems of being clever is that you can hear, the other argument on the other side, and sometimes you start, defending yourself even before the person has even started saying, "Well, yeah, but what about?" So some of you saw on the website. This may well be my all-time favorite. Well, it's Jung said it. I have a thing of. It's called Favorite Jung Sayings, and it's like, I was just reading it this morning. It's 3 pages, typewritten pages, single space. My favorite is Jung Sayings. So before I came here, I started reading, and I got thinking, oh my God. Because, they're just incredible. They're so wonderful. And just that 3 pages was like, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 words. So this is like just a tiny, tiny piece of what he said that I love so much, and that's what I wanted to share with you all today, and particularly just today, with the Easter egg hunt. I wanted to share it today because it really, in a way, is a line of demarcation between the East and the West. I would like to suggest to you. Again, a lot of people would not agree. So he said, some of you read this already. This is really one of my. This is almost like a mantra to me. The way is not without danger. everything good is costly, and the development of the personality is one of the most costly of all things. It is a question of yea-saying. I just love that. It is a question of yea-saying to oneself, of taking oneself as the most serious of tasks, of being conscious of everything one does, and keeping it constantly before one's eyes in all the dubious aspects, all of its dubious aspects. The Easter egg hunt perhaps could be an example of the dubious aspects of the personality, do you think? Truly, he says, it's a task that taxes us to the utmost. Okay, so he says that the way is about the development of the personality. Now, what do you do with that when you're talking about letting the self go? You've got to have a self before you can let it go, right? Well, that's certainly, that's certainly an Eastern ideal. But what does Jung mean by developing the personality? What does that mean? And also, what does it mean when he says that it is not without danger? Why would it be dangerous to be developing the personality? So that kind of brought me to and brings me to something else that I've read you all stated so many times. That again is kind of almost horrible. I love horrible things, and it's the W.D. Auden's amazingly stark and somewhat upsetting little poem. We would rather be ruined than changed. I mean, that's enough, isn't it? I mean, who needs to go on with that? We would rather be ruined than changed. We would rather die in our dread than climb the cross of the moment and let our illusions die. That's dangerous. When Jung says, right, that is the way is not without danger. Well, if the way involves climbing the cross of the moment and letting our illusions die, that sounds pretty damn dangerous to me. So I want to suggest to you, well, I'm going to tell you a story. And I don't think I've ever told this story before. I'm always telling stories, self-disclosing. But I always tell stories, about me that look good. But anyway, so I don't think Allison, you're a pretty good historian, but I don't think that you've heard this, but maybe you have. So some of you know that I went to India and Crete, and I traveled when I was 36 years old. And I think back many times and think, what caused me, why did I do that? Because I can't remember now. It's so long ago. 36, when I was 36, that's like about 50 years ago or more. So I came back to New York, and when I got back to New York, I think I was 40. And I remember that at that time I was playing, we were like a refurbished, we had someone who had donated money in this little church in Harlem, very poor little church, but we had a pipe organ, and so someone would be adding to ranks to it year by year. So I was playing that old thing, and it was quite fun. That little church, it was an Episcopal church in Harlem, a high Episcopal church in Harlem. You couldn't see for the incense in there, right? It was just really a kind of a great place. And so a friend of mine flew from Europe, and she's an opera singer, and so she was going to sing in our choir that Sunday morning. So she came on the weekend to spend the weekend with me, and I was going through around the age 40, and this is like 2 or 3 years after I'd come back from India, I kind of felt like I was dying inside. And it was the strangest feeling because it wasn't like a depression. It's not like I felt sad. I just felt dead. I felt dead inside. So I told my friend, and of course she just thought that, she did everything she could to cheer me up. I really wasn't sad. I just felt dead. So that Sunday she sang in the choir, and so I'm directing. We had a rehearsal, and so she stopped everybody and asked everyone to pray for me. That was a mistake. After church, I think I stopped traffic screaming at her. I said, "How could you embarrass me?" So she had the ability to withstand any storm in the world, so she just stood there and took it. Later, I go back and I think about that now. I think some part of me was letting go. Something in me. I've never had an experience like that. It's not like it wasn't. It didn't even feel psychological. Like I said, it felt like something was dead. I've wondered so many times, what was that? What happened in that period? It was like maybe 2 years. Maybe a 6-month period. So that's. I'm gonna just table that for a moment. That at age 40, something quite amazing psychologically happened that I didn't cause, I didn't plan it. It had nothing to do with an intention. It just was like, I'm going to really say it was grace in a minute. So recently I've been working with someone, and this has been sort of like a pattern of working with more than one person in the past 2 or 3 months. I was fortunate. This is sort of like this would be a young man who would be in his late 40s, and his mother passed away, and it has caused a grief that is almost bottomless, a bottomless grief. It's sort of like it opened up something in this young man that far beyond just the experience that we have of losing a parent. And so sitting with this young man, I go back, then so it's brought me back to the experience that I had when I came back to New York after being in India. It's almost as if something happened to him. His mother represented something in him that was all of when he was a little boy. It's almost like a constructed world that he had built was crumbling. And I have experienced rarely so much anger. Just this tremendous anger. It's like anger at God, anger at life, anger that something so early in him. It's like a little baby almost, and something that how to explain it? It's almost as if it's like a reality that some part of him almost cannot embrace, because her passing took away some fantasy of life being lovely and good, some fantasy that life is beautiful and worth living, and I can't come up with the words. I have seen this over and over and over as a therapist. What has happened to him? As I get to my age and look back, it occurs to me that most of us never really grow up. We just grow old. We don't grow up. The child, right, that holds on to this fantasy, it clings to the fantasy that life is beautiful, life is good, And I'll tell you another fantasy that the child holds on to with tenacity beyond belief. I am innocent. How many people in this room think you're innocent, including me? Don't we all? We're just all convinced of our sincerity, aren't we? I am. You know, I think about all the sincere, innocent children on the Easter egg field over there, you know, plowing through and going after the eggs. So, I would argue with some passion that the psychological way is to grow that little child up, for it to let go of the illusion as that it clings to, right? The illusion of, first of all, innocence, the illusion of innocence. You know, I mean, we need to believe we're innocent. We really do. And the illusion of, or as one, I think, maybe Chobe interpreted the illusion of freedom, the illusion that we're in control. And we can control reality. So if you think about, you know, just sort of like, just let your mind just sort of like stretch out and think about reality. Whatever reality is, who knows what reality is? But it's pretty much for a child to grasp, isn't it? Right? Old age, sickness, and death. Who lays that on a child of 2 or 3? Well, you know, honey, I've got some bad news. So I was sitting with someone just a couple of weeks ago, and she's embarking on a new journey, and it's really and just marvelous, just a wonderful, wonderful person. And she was talking about how she really is really confident. She believes in herself. She says, "I know I can do this," and it's a pretty, you know, demanding thing that she's going to do. And she says, "I do have some doubt, but I know I can do it." And so I said, "Well, wait just a minute." I said, "If you know you can do it, how can you have some doubt?" I said, "Those two don't really go together, right?" So, and she's, as a very good client, she said, so she closed her eyes and I said, "Just think about that." So kind of like go into the doubt, go into that feeling of doubt. She started crying. It was amazing. I mean, and it was profoundly touching. She had tears going down her eyes. I said, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what have I done? And so I said, "So what are you feeling?" She said, what's happening?" It touches me this moment. She said, "I just felt fear. Fear." And I said, "Fear?" And she said, "I felt what it was like to be a little girl. And her life was very scary when she was a little girl. She hasn't felt that fear in maybe 30 years. She's never really touched that fear of life, you know, that can be really, really, really hard when you're certainly a little girl and you're not protected by parents," which she was not at all. Not at all. So what happens to a little child that's 3 when life is that scary? What does it do? I don't think this is in Buddhism at all. The Buddha was very smart. He was smarter than all of us put together, and I actually really mean that. I really do believe that. But, you know, I've said this as a joke before. You know, if you went up to the Buddha and told him about your inner child, I mean, can you imagine? Well, it said that's just a story. That's what the Eastern teaching was. That's just a story in your mind. It's not just a story. When it's seen as a story, it's a story. But until it's seen, it's not a story. It's the truth. It's reality. So here's a psychological little thing for you. I don't think I've talked about Jung at all. Here's a little thing for you. The psyche, when it cannot deal with too much pain, splits off. It splits off. You've never seen the word splits off in one single Buddhist teaching that I've ever read, and I have read since I have been 30 years old. It splits off. That doesn't mean it goes away. That doesn't mean it disappears. It just splits off and becomes autonomous in the psyche, but not accessible. Jung would say then someone triggers it, and it's a marvelous word. He says when it gets triggered, it gets constellated, activated. How many split off parts were activated at the Easter egg hunt on Saturday? You had 1,000 people there with all of their children. How many split off parts got activated? Get them eggs, right? Pushing their children, right? Fill your basket up with eggs. So this is not a Buddhist concept, and it's part of the problem of Buddhism. It is part of the problem because Buddhism, as wonderful as it is, and I mean, I happen to believe it is at least as wonderful as the others are, but it has got to engage that on some level eventually. Now, what we've done here in the West is we've just said we've got mindfulness to good parenting, mindfulness to good sex. You can go to Inside LA and take a workshop on mindfulness to romance. It's the truth. Someone asked me the other day that they I think I told you all. I heard that supposedly there's a thing called mindfulness to orgasm. I swear. I promise. It's in Los Angeles. Well, of course, anything's in Los Angeles, isn't it?
Yeah.
But how is that? I mean, it boggles my mind. So we have either mindfulness to having a good, being a good employee, a good employer. The Pentagon is working with mindfulness because now they're using mindfulness to, to help you kill. Well, that's a good one. And then, so that's how Buddhism has embraced psychology in the West. Or then we have this other side where, we're told that we're supposed to love all women as our mother, all men as our, then we go to the Bodhisattva ideal, love everything, and I don't know about you, but it feels like a bar a little too high for me. So this embracing the personal, this child part of us, as in the child, it's like it's a little bit naive. So someone asked me, actually only last week, I'm doing very good. It's 5th time. I'm ready to quit. Someone asked me last week, emailed me. I got so many emails, it is unbelievable. I'm just bragging. Someone asked me that they discovered that they're very kind to themselves when they sit. So, like I remember someone in our, Wendy had a workshop a couple of years ago called Taming the Judgmental Mind. I mean, it was packed. I mean, the room was packed. So this person said, so you discovered, he's being kind of judgmental as he sits, and so he emailed me. He said, "So, do you think maybe I should be sending metta to myself, loving kindness?" And then of course he asked me, "Well, so if so, you got any suggestions?" And ironically, I come back to this, first of all, Yea-Saying. What Jung said, I think that's about the closest we can come to loving kindness, is to say yes to that child, to acknowledge it, to acknowledge that it is a psychic reality that for most of us has been split off forever. And then we find ourselves, going from shock to shock to shock. Oh my God, somebody died. It's like, how could somebody die? It's like, so Yea-Saying to me is the Western way that would be comparable to the Eastern way of sending loving kindness to yourself. Yea-Saying is acknowledging, what was it he said, Jung said, in all of its dubious aspects. If it's true, as the Buddha said, that when you were born, Ryan, your little brain was conditioned by greed, hatred, and delusion. Okay. That's brilliant. Okay? That's brilliant. He really saw the truth. Okay. But the question comes of, what do you do with that little greed, hatred, and delusion? Do you judge it and do you punish it? And do you say, I've got to get rid of it? And the solution is, I shall now send loving kindness to all beings. May all beings be happy and safe from harm. May all women be mindful. I mean, I don't think it is psychologically intelligent, because it's not directing towards that the real living part of us that is still split off. The greed, hatred, and delusion is in that first part of us that was split off. In all of us. So Jung says, and it's so brilliant, you can't change that if you can't say yes to it. You can't do it. Driving over here just a while ago, my little mind slipped into some criticism. I don't remember exactly what it was. It could have been Beverly, but I don't think so. But there was just something that I was thinking about in terms of long-range meditation, something about today. And so I had this kind of like moment of ill will. No, I didn't think like I wanted somebody to die or anything, but it was a little ill will. So I'm at the red light, and there it was. And I saw two things happen. First of all, I started to call it ill will. And there was going to be a negative on it. And then I just said, that's okay. Yes. Yeah. I acknowledge that part that is envious. It's okay. Yeah. That's Yea-Saying. And if we are relentlessly being those crazy people on the field today, which we all are, it's a full-time job to be Yea-Saying. It's a full-time job. And by the way, it doesn't, if you have an impulse to do something that is not skillful, Yea-Saying doesn't mean go ahead, honey, and get out there and get those children. It doesn't mean that you're giving carte blanche to the children, right? And by the way, the children really are a metaphor for us. They're the children that were running around. They're the same as the parents, because the parents are children. We're all the same. So the Yea-Saying is not giving you permission to be a little shit. Excuse my English. It's not. But it's acknowledging that part of us. And, because only in that acknowledgement do we have any possibility of growing up. I think that some part of my little boy started letting go at 40. Oh my God. And the client that I'm sitting with, I just weep for him. I mean, I weep that he's never had that experience. And how many people have? Very few. I look back and I say, oh my God. I mean, how did that happen to me? I don't know why it happened. Was it because I went to India and, and I thought I was going on a big spiritual journey. I was going to be holy, right? Right. I cried myself to sleep every night because I was lonely. But I came back and I was not one bit more holy and not one bit more spiritual. Maybe though, some part of me started to grow up. Maybe. And so, if it's true that some part of me started to grow up, I can assure you that, I sat with someone about 15 years ago. I'll never forget. She looked at me. Wonderful. They're all of my clients were. She looked at me and she said, "You'll never make me grow up." And I thought, oh my God, I knew it was true. I knew it was true. I would no more have tried. I knew it was true. I was never going to make her grow up. There was some part of her that was so disliked the way the world is. And she was like 9 years old when this shit happened to her. She had lost her mother. I think most of the children say, "You'll never make me grow up." I think almost every child inside says that. And you tell me how's Buddhism going to help that, right? I don't know. So, when I said that, what happened, I don't know. So I come back to New York that Sunday, and then my dear friend tells my little choir to pray for me. Victor he just feels really bad about himself. He's not believing in himself. It was just very sweet. Of course, I just almost murdered her. Well, she embarrassed me in front of my choir. So it occurs to me, and this is a kind of all the last little piece here. Oh no, I had one more thing I wanted to say. This just goes on and on forever, doesn't it? It occurred to me, and I would just like to suggest this to each of you. You were meant to grow up. I'm not sure that you were meant to be enlightened. I'm not. I'm not against that. Maybe it's wonderful. But I know from psychology that it's our birthright. We were meant to grow up. And yet, the psyche splits off and off and off because it can't stand reality. It splits off at 3, it splits off at 5, it splits off at 10. It depends on whatever happened, And by the grace of God, some of us get to 12. I don't know. So I wanted to read this because I read this many times, but I love it so much. And this is a Spoon River anthology. You all have heard this before. All these people are dead. They're standing by their tombstones, but they don't know they're dead. They're standing in the Spoon River, this little village, and they're telling their stories. It's a wonderful, wonderful play. I saw a dear friend of mine in it. And so this is George Gray. He's standing there and he's talking out, standing there by his tombstone. And he says, and so on the tombstone, I guess there's a sailboat or a boat, right? And he says, "I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with a furled sail at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sail and catch the winds." No, I've just left something out here. Yeah. And we must lift the sail and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It's a boat longing for the sea and yet afraid. To me, growing up is almost the most wonderful way to give meaning to your life. It's certainly enough for me. I don't need anything more than that. And that's the end of my talk.